You are listening to The Diary of a Wannabe Writer, presented by Richard A. Boxshall, in which I chronicle my life and attempts to become a professional writer by, doing some writing, daily, hopefully. Hello, it's Tuesday the 3rd of December 2024. You are listening to The Diary of a Wannabe Writer. Once again, productive day. I did actually plan to be productive today, so my productivity in the last 2 days came at rather as a surprise to me, but no, today I kind of planned what I needed to do. I do know that I am working tomorrow. I did apply for unpaid leave, but for whatever reason, they were unable to fulfil that request. So I do actually have a standby duty tomorrow at the airport. So I have no idea. It's quite a late one, so I suspect I'm covering a specific flight, and whether I'll get used or not, you don't tend to be used if you're on an evening standby, but that's not to say it won't happen. I'm certainly not going to turn around and say, I definitely won't get used tomorrow, because who knows. Anyway, but what have I been doing today? So I've been reading a little bit more. So I'm a beta reader for T.G. Campbell's 7th book in the Bow Street Society series, and I've read a few chapters of that today, and I am going to read some more quite soon. The other thing I'm doing is I'm reading a book. So I finished the second book in the Before the Coffee Gets Cold trilogy yesterday. It was called Tales from the Cafe. It was good, but I think they were trying to make you believe a particular thing was, or the writer was trying to make you think a particular thing was going to happen before the end of the book. And then they subverted it. And I can't work out whether I think what they did was clever or annoying. And I'm still stuck in the middle of that. And I don't like reading too many books by the same author in one go. So I am taking a break from reading the third book in the trilogy. There are actually 5 books in the series, but it started as a trilogy, and the any books after book 3, so 4 onwards, are set at some point within the original trilogy. That's all I know. But anyway, I didn't feel like reading book 3, so instead I've picked up Small Gods by Terry Pratchett. Now, I like Terry Pratchett, but I do find sometimes he's the opposite to Douglas Adams. Douglas Adams was compact genius. And the way he wrote. Whereas I think there's a lot of genius in Pratchett's words, but they're spread out, so it's not as concentrated. And in that way, you do sometimes think he writes books that seem like a good idea, but maybe didn't work in practicality. So examples of books of his that really did work, things like Mort, the original Colour of Magic, absolutely brilliant. Stuff like Moving Pictures, I was never quite so sold on that. So... but the one I'm reading now, Small Gods, has actually gripped me in a way that really surprises me, because it's not set in any of the cities that we've really spent a lot of time in before in the Discworld novels. From what I've seen, apart from a cameo by Death, who I think probably cameos in most of the books, if they're not about him, haven't seen any of the regular characters. And so, to be honest, I was kind of putting off reading this one for a little while, and actually it's totally gripped me from page 1. So I'm really enjoying it, and I've already read about half of it. I should be reading a little bit more of that before I go to bed tonight as well. And then the last thing I've done today is a bit of writing, which I always plan to do. Now, this is again, this podcast is being recorded as part of today's live stream, so I did live stream today's writing, and I intended to do a little bit more than I did, but that's absolutely fine, because I had a good old natter with some of my audience, and that's the main reason I do it, is for the interaction. So my original plan was to write a little scene. So there's something that happens in chapter 38 that I'm writing now. I suddenly realised there's a setup scene for it, which I hadn't written, and it's in all my notes, and yet somehow I had completely failed to write this setup scene. So that's what I did today on the live stream. It was a short scene. I've placed it, I think I ended up placing it towards the end of chapter 35, because 36 and 37 are too long to have additional material in them. But it's basically a setup. So something that's going to happen possibly during my next writing session for chapter 38, whenever that is. It probably won't be tomorrow, realistically. It won't be, I can't even tell you when it's going to be. Once I know, because I've got 5 days that I could work. Tomorrow's a standby, so it probably won't be then. And it depends how I get used. So if I get used on my standby and end up going abroad, then yes, I will do some writing down route. I will live stream it if the internet is good enough where I'm live streaming from. It's weird though, isn't it? Where I can live stream from. So there are certain hotels in America where the Wi-Fi isn't good enough for me to live stream. And yet, conversely, I go to somewhere like Abuja in Nigeria, which you don't associate with, telecommunications and stuff. Works perfectly first time. So, yeah, bizarre. But so whether I stream or not will depend on what's going on down there. But I should still be able to do the podcast, hopefully. So the scene that I have written the setup for, the beginning of the payoff will be in the next sequence I write of chapter 38. Now, it may not be, the payoff may not actually be in the bit I write next, but it'll be within one of the next couple of writing sessions. Certainly the beginning of the moment that leads to that payoff will be written tomorrow. The other thing I will be doing at some point is I had a moment of unpleasant violence perpetrated by my character Marianne, and I was mulling it over yesterday after I'd finished the writing, and Marianne wouldn't do that. They are not that kind of person. I mean, push comes to shove, if they had to, they probably would, but Ronnie would have done it. So I'm just going to rejig that moment so that it's Ronnie that actually does the unspeakable thing to Claire's arm with the machete. But there we go. Right. So, yes, 3 days on the trot where I've been quite successful, where I've achieved what I wanted to achieve. So that's not bad, is it? Thank you for listening. I will do a podcast tomorrow. I might actually record an emergency podcast for tomorrow, because the reality is I don't know what I'm doing and whether I'll have time to do one. So I kind of need to record the podcast before I go to work, and probably even put it out before I go to work, because I don't know if I'm going to be flying somewhere or not. Anyway, I'll shut up. Thank you for listening. Take care. I will be back with something tomorrow. Bye-bye. You have been listening to The Diary of a Wannabe Writer, presented by Richard A. Boxall. Thank you for tuning in to my random ramblings, and if you'd like to know more about me or my projects, visit my link tree at linktr.ee/Richard Wright, capital R, capital W. Thank you for listening.